Alright, well, to take a little bit of a breather from wood and cutting and gluing and epoxy, this is a simple, very simple soaking tube that I made for pre-soaking my cap strips prior to bending. It's just a piece of 4-inch drainage PVC, and the end on the floor there is capped, and I have it tie wrapped to my milling machine. The angle works out really well because if it wasn't at an angle as you see here, you can't, well, I couldn't slide the cap strip into it. The cap strip would hit my ceiling and I couldn't get it in there. So this ended up being a good angle to slide the cap strips into the tube, as well as having it wedged into the corner down on the floor so it wouldn't slide around anywhere. And then when I'm not using it, I just cap the top with whatever's around to keep sawdust and insects and stuff like that from crawling in it. So I just glued the end cap on, stuck it against my mill, tie wrapped it down, got a bucket, filled it with water, done. Start soaking. Here is my cap strip pre-bending jig. After the cap strips come out of the soaking tube, they're laid up on this jig to pre-bend the top cap strips for all of the ribs. This particular jig was made from 1x8, I think, knotty pine, and I took 3 boards, 6 feet long, and I stacked them up on one on top of the other and glued them together and clamped them and let the glue dry, obviously. And that gave me a wide enough jig that I can lay out 4 cap strips at a time, side by side, on this jig. A little trick that I used was the going back to the tracing paper. I traced the top curve of the original riblet plan onto the tracing paper, and then I took that and cut it out exactly on the line. Then I used that to trace the curve onto a piece of cardboard, and then I took that piece of cardboard, laid it out on the side of my bending jig, and cut it with a bandsaw. This shot here is just a close-up of the end of the pre-bending jig, and it just shows you how I cut a slit, and that slit holds the ends of the cap strips, so you can go ahead and bend them. And then the wood, if you will, on this picture, to the top left of the actual ends of the cap strips, you want to have that kind of beefy. You don't want to make that too small or too thin, because the force of the cap strips will either snap it off, or it won't be strong enough to maintain a clamping force on the ends. So keep that kind of beefy. And I don't know if you probably noticed on that previous picture that the nice looking green weight that I had on the center, when I would bend my ribs, it would have a little bit of a bow on the top, and I just lay that weight up there to flatten out the bow a little bit. But that's what I came up with, just some knotty pine, and glued 3 of those together, one on top of the other, and then traced out the top curve from the riblet plan on the tracing paper, then made a cardboard template, and then laid that template line onto the knotty pine. Hey everybody, just wanted to say real quick again, thanks for checking out my YouTube videos, and just a couple of real quick tidbits before you leave. If you'd be so kind as to check out my Gofundme page, the link is down in the description of these videos. For those of you who find it in your heart to donate for this new cause of mine, I've got another project going on. And there's some really cool things I'd like to do with this aircraft, and again, that's all explained in my GoFundMe. But if you find moved enough to go do that and donate, I've got this horizontal stabilizer skin, and donors will get their name put on this skin, and ultimately when this gets filled and the aircraft gets finished, this is going to be hung up on the wall of honor in my hangar, just a little bit of recognition for those donors who helped make the project a reality. Another thing too is, I'm sure you've noticed that even this video that I'm making right now is of the same or worse quality than the video that you just watched, and that's because, believe it or not, this camera is the exact same camera that I filmed the original hint videos with. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm not really sure why, but I know the video quality lacks, but hopefully the information within is worth something. And the other thing that I want to mention real quick is, again, these are little snippets from my hint video DVDs, so a lot of these individual clips just kind of come to an abrupt end. That's just the way it is when I'm trying to rip these DVDs apart and re-edit them into small little segments, and they just kind of end weird at times. But that's it. That's all I wanted to say. And again, thanks, and I hope you'll come back, check out my channel, and see if there are any new videos and updates. All right, I'll talk to you then. See you.